U.S.-Philippines trade talks, Trump-Marcos meeting yields modest tariff shift. A new chapter in U.S.-Philippines trade relations, but at what cost? In a move that could have far-reaching implications for global trade, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a new 19% tariff rate for goods from the Philippines, following a meeting with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the White House. But here's where it gets controversial: is this modest tariff shift a victory for both nations, or a sign of things to come in the complex world of international trade? According to Trump, the new trade deal involves big numbers and marks a significant shift in the Philippines' stance towards China. The Southeast Asian nation had been seeking a lower tariff rate than the 20% threatened by Trump earlier this month, and the new rate is still above the 17% rate set in April. However, it matches the 19% rate announced for Indonesia and bests Vietnam's slightly higher rate of 20%. So, what does this mean for the average consumer? In simple terms, the new tariff rate will affect the prices of goods imported from the Philippines, which could have a ripple effect on the global economy. But Trump is optimistic, saying that the very big numbers in the trade agreement will only grow larger. The U.S. had a deficit of nearly $5 billion with the Philippines last year on bilateral goods trade of $23.5 billion. Gregory Poling, a Southeast Asia expert at Washington Center for Strategic and International Studies, notes that it's too early to say much about the Philippines trade deal since no details have been released. At the end of the day, I don't think the Philippine government is sweating the final number so long as it keeps Philippine-made goods competitive with those of its neighbors, which this does, Poling said. The White House has announced further details of a framework for a U.S.-Indonesia trade agreement, with negotiators due to finalize the terms in coming weeks. And this is the part most people miss: Trump's tariffs on nearly every trading partner have upended global trade flows, with almost all countries facing a 10% tariff that took effect in April and many facing steep additional tariffs from August 1. During the Oval Office event, Trump hinted at a possible visit to China in the near future, noting that the Philippines had distanced itself from Beijing after his election last November. The country was maybe tilting toward China, but we untilted it very, very quickly, Trump said. Philippine officials had stressed that Manila must become economically stronger if it is to serve as a truly robust U.S. partner in the Indo-Pacific. But what about the concerns of Filipino Americans and migrant workers who have made multiple requests for support amid federal immigration raids? Protesters gathered near the White House as Marcos arrived, demanding that the Philippine leader address their pleas. As the world watches the unfolding drama of international trade, one question remains: what's the real cost of these trade deals, and who ultimately benefits? We want to hear from you. Do you think the new tariff rate is a step in the right direction, or a sign of trouble ahead? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Trump's connection to Imelda Marcos, a political legacy. Bold revelations: family ties can open unexpected diplomatic doors. When Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. meets President Donald Trump on Tuesday, it's not just about trade and defense agreements, it's also about a shared past that reaches back to an iconic era in Philippine history. Marcos is banking on a unique personal connection with Trump, one that may trace back to the influential role of his mother. When they first spoke in November, Trump casually inquired, "How's Imelda?" This greeting, relayed by an insider, was not just small talk but a nod to the former First Lady of the Philippines, a cultural symbol from the 1980s and 90s. Trump's admiration for strong familial legacies is well known. He often praises family connections, believing that lineage and heritage hold significant value, even when evaluating international leaders or his own team. And this, for him, was precisely why Marcos's family background struck a chord. Trump once remarked, "A great family legacy and highly respected in this country. I know that because I have many friends in the Philippines," right before Tuesday's meeting, highlighting his appreciation for historical ties. His early encounters with Imelda Marcos in New York further illustrate this connection. As a young businessman, Trump mingled with the international jet set, attending parties where Imelda, then the wife of the long-ruling Ferdinand Marcos, was well known for her opulent lifestyle financed by public funds and her famously extravagant shoe collection. It was a time when Imelda and her husband experienced a dramatic fall from grace, fleeing to Hawaii with valuables during a national uprising. Images even show a 1991 New York birthday party where Trump, alongside his then-wife Marla Maples, was seated with the glamorous Imelda Marcos, an intriguing snapshot from before her return to face corruption charges in her homeland. Imelda later reinvented herself, serving several terms in the Philippine House of Representatives, and helped pave the way for her son, affectionately known as Bongbong, to win the presidency in 2022. While Imelda was convicted on graft charges in 2018 and handed a 42-year sentence, she has remained free at the age of 96. For President Marcos Jr., these family connections could prove to be a strategic advantage. They might help him negotiate a favorable trade deal that sidesteps the 20% tariff Trump has been threatening and further solidify the long-standing U.S.-Philippines Defense Pact. This is particularly important as he becomes the first Southeast Asian leader to meet with Trump since the start of his second term. Marcos aims to leverage the deeply rooted historical ties between the United States and the Philippines, an alliance dating back to World War II, which today stands as the oldest U.S. alliance in the Pacific and a critical counterbalance to China. Ahead of his visit, Philippine officials expressed optimism that this familial bond would facilitate a warm and productive meeting. Philippine ambassador to Washington, José Manuel "Babe" Romualdez, commented, "That personal connection is significant. We all know that President Trump values his personal relationships with world leaders. This friendship is certainly an asset for the Philippines as President Marcos has that personal connection with President Trump." On the official side, a White House representative indicated that Trump is eagerly anticipating Marcos's visit, stating that the agenda includes discussions on a shared commitment to a free, open, prosperous, and secure Indo-Pacific region as well as advancing mutual economic prosperity. The ambassador further reminded us of the long history of U.S.-Philippine friendship, commemorated this year by marking the 80th anniversary of the Allied sacrifice during World War II. Adding a historical note to the visit, Marcos will stay in the presidential guest quarters at Blair House, a place with its own rich legacy, where his parents once stayed during a visit to then-President Ronald Reagan. But here's where it gets controversial: do these deep historical and familial ties really translate into a beneficial political advantage in today's complex global landscape? What do you think? Are personal connections the secret weapon in diplomacy, or are they merely nostalgic relics of the past? Share your thoughts and let's dive into the discussion. Trump announces trade agreements with Philippines and Indonesia, full details. In a significant move for international trade, President Donald Trump has announced a new trade agreement with the Philippines, alongside revealing further details about an existing deal with Indonesia. These agreements mark a continuation of Trump's efforts to reshape America's trade landscape, aiming to balance tariffs and reduce trade barriers. During a meeting at the White House with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Trump highlighted the positive outcomes of their discussions. "It was a beautiful visit and we concluded our trade deal," Trump shared on his social media platform. However, the specifics of the agreement remain somewhat unclear, as is typical with recent trade announcements from the administration. Under the terms of the agreement with both the Philippines and Indonesia, American businesses will be subject to 19% tariffs on imports from these countries, while goods exported from the U.S. to these nations will enter tariff-free. This approach contrasts with the higher tariffs Trump has previously threatened, ranging up to 50% on certain trading partners and a comprehensive 50% tax on copper imports. The trade deal with the Philippines is particularly noteworthy, as it follows agreements with 4 other countries over the past 3 months. Despite these developments, details about the agreement with Vietnam, announced earlier this month, have yet to be fully disclosed. Trump has emphasized the quality of these trade deals over their quantity, a shift in tone from his earlier promises of numerous reciprocal agreements. Despite setting an August 1 deadline for countries to finalize deals or face increased tariffs, investors have not shown significant concern about potential disruptions. The U.S. imported approximately $14 billion worth of goods from the Philippines in the previous year, with electronics, processed foods, machinery, and apparel leading the list. Conversely, American exports to the Philippines totaled around $9 billion, primarily consisting of electronics and processed foods. For Indonesia, the trade agreement includes adjustments to non-tariff barriers, such as the elimination of taxes on digital service revenue and the removal of pre-shipment inspection requirements for U.S. goods. These changes are expected to particularly benefit American farmers by simplifying the export process. Indonesia, ranked as the U.S.'s 23rd largest trading partner, saw $28 billion in U.S. imports last year, with apparel and footwear being the top purchases. American exports to Indonesia amounted to $10 billion, dominated by oilseeds, grain, and oil and gas products. As these trade agreements take shape, they underscore Trump's administration's focus on renegotiating trade terms to what they perceive as more favorable conditions for the United States. The full implications of these deals for both American businesses and international trade relations remain to be seen, but they certainly represent a significant step in Trump's trade policy agenda.